Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. And today we're going to be hopping right back into our series where we are predicting every single Power 4 team's record by the start of the college football season. Today it's the USC Trojans who make their move out of the Pac-12 and into the Big Ten. The Big Ten Conference is much tougher than the Pac-12, and overall they're going to have a much higher level of competition here, and I don't know if the Trojans are going to be quite up to it. Lincoln Riley is a good head coach, but USC just isn't quite the same powerhouse that they were a while ago. The schedule certainly does not help their case to try and make a bowl game. They kick off the season with a very, very tough neutral site game against LSU. LSU is going to have an incredible offense again this year, and they are going to be a very difficult team to stop for a team like USC, who has had defensive struggles the past few years. It's going to be real tough for the Trojans to keep up in this one. Utah State, though, as a home game, shouldn't be too terrible. They most likely are going to be able to get that win. After the bye week, though, the Big Ten schedule kicks off, and that is not easy either. A road trip to Michigan is a brutal Big Ten opener, and the home game against Wisconsin won't be that easy either. A road trip to Minnesota should help them right the ship a little bit, but after that's just another very difficult matchup against Penn State. They do have it at home, but the Nittany Lions are going to be a very good team. This will be a really tough one for USC to try and win. It gets a little bit better after that with a road trip to Maryland. Even though it's a long road trip, USC is the better team here. And then a home game against Rutgers. A road trip to Washington is a classic Pac-12 matchup. This one shouldn't be quite as bad as some of the other Big Ten games they've had, like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn State. But Washington is still a pretty good team this year. They brought in Coach Jed Fish from Arizona, and they are going to be tough to beat on the road. Following bye week number 2 is a matchup at home against Nebraska. Dylan Raiola makes his debut this season. He is a very highly touted quarterback, and we'll have to see if he lives up to the hype. But if he does, Nebraska is going to be able to keep up with USC on the road. Their classic matchup with UCLA is the following week. It is on the road, but that doesn't really make that much of a difference when you're both playing the same city. It's going to be a good game, I'm sure, like it usually is. And overall, I think USC is a little bit more talented, but this is still going to be a very close game with some upset potential. Finally, Notre Dame to finish out the year. This one's at home for USC, but the Fighting Irish are a very good team. They brought in transfer quarterback Riley Leonard from Duke, and they are going to be very, very tough to stop. Another really tough game for USC. So, all in all, they have 6 home games and 5 away games with that neutral site matchup against LSU. They have 5 opponents ranked in the rank and file top 25, which gives them an overall schedule difficulty of 8 out of 10.
Looking at the lone guaranteed win for the USC Trojans this year, it's Utah State. Utah State's emerging out of a scandal, pretty disturbing scandal at that. We think that USC's talent and Utah State's status as being in turmoil is going to be a good recipe for a dominant USC win in blowout fashion. Looking at the likely wins for USC, we have 5 of them. We have Minnesota, Maryland, Rutgers, Nebraska, and UCLA. Minnesota, as we've said on the channel in the past, they're kind of like Wisconsin, but not as good as Wisconsin. We think Wisconsin will beat USC because they're physical, they're disciplined, and that's USC's worst nightmare. But Minnesota's not really nearly as good as Wisconsin is, to be completely honest, even though they are a decent team in their own right. So we expect USC to go into Minneapolis and win. As far as Maryland goes, this is a Maryland team that won't be as good as they were last year. Quarterback Talia Tagovailoa is gone. So with an inexperienced signal caller, we think USC will march into College Park and get the win. Moving on to Rutgers, this is a Rutgers team that does appear to be on the rise. Coach Schiano has done a tremendous job um, in his second stint as coach of the Scarlet Knights. But all that said, we think USC wins this one without much headache. USC's got a lot of talent. All they have to do is fix the defense, and they will be just fine. Nebraska is probably a team that will be better. We say that every year, but we think, quarterback Dylan Raiola, his status as a five-star recruit, uh, that will start to show throughout the season. He is a very talented kid, and Coach Rule has done a great job everywhere he's gone in college. He rebuilt Temple, made them good. Rebuilt Baylor, made them good. So it's we expect him to do that at Nebraska as well, even though this is his greatest challenge yet in a Big Ten conference that is absolutely stacked. But we think USC wins this one. We think SC's talent takes over. And UCLA beat them last year in a game where they really shouldn't have won. USC's defense was just so horrible. Um, and we think it'll be better because they got UCLA's defensive coordinator to come over to SC. So we think USC will know what UCLA is doing on offense a little bit, and that will play into their advantage. It does say a road game at UCLA, but it's from the LA Coliseum to Pasadena, so there might even be more USC fans in attendance. We don't expect UCLA having home field to play into their advantage at all, and it might even be a disadvantage for the Bruins, to be honest. As for the toss-ups, we only have one of them. It's Washington. A lot of people are going to pencil in a Huskies victory here, and it's hard to really blame them. Washington's coming off a national championship appearance, and despite the fact that they're losing a lot of guys and their coach from last year, um, USC is so unpredictable. It's hard to expect them to win more than 4 out of 10 in Seattle. But that said, these teams only play once; they don't play 10 times, so it is, a toss-up in our eyes. We think USC has a considerable advantage in the talent level, but that's really the case every year, and Washington routinely beats them. So we think Washington will win, but it'll be a closer game than most people will give it credit for on paper. And finally, we have the likely losses for this USC Trojans team. We have LSU, Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Notre Dame. We think LSU had it was an anomaly. Last year's horrendous defensive performance was. So we think they'll get back on track on that side of the ball this year, and their offense is always, very, very strong. So we don't think this game will be very close. It is a neutral site. USC may have more fans there because it's in Vegas, but we don't think that'll ultimately matter. Looking at Michigan, this is an early season battle for USC and Ann Arbor. Michigan's coming off the national championship. They may be losing their coach. They may be losing a lot of talent, but we don't think that's going to hurt the Wolverines very much. And USC's first game in the Big Ten. As far as Wisconsin goes, a lot of people are going to pencil in a Trojan win here. USC has more talent and the home field advantage in this one, but we think Wisconsin's style of play is USC's worst nightmare. They love to be physical. They're fundamentally sound. USC is, they're more of a finesse team. Their defense has been very bad under Riley. It remains to be seen if the new defensive coordinator who came over from UCLA will turn things around there, and he very well could. But we think Wisconsin goes into LA and gets it done. And as far as Penn State and Notre Dame goes, both of these teams are very, very good defensively. They may have their offensive shortcomings, but we don't think that'll matter very much against USC, whose defense is known for being weak. It may be better this year than it was last year, but we don't think it'll be good enough to make a difference against either the Nittany Lions or the Fighting Irish.
With all of those likely losses, it is going to be tough for USC to make a bowl game. Starting out the season, they only have one win in those first 4 games with that matchup against Utah State. I do think that they're able to get the road game against Minnesota, But following that, another loss at Penn State, and they're sitting at 2-4. So they got to win 4 out of the last 6 games. And it's definitely doable because the schedule does get easier, but they have to avoid an upset. The road trip to Maryland has some upset potential, as does Nebraska and UCLA. Even Rutgers could potentially win on the road. So all 4 of those are must-win games. We do have the Trojans winning them. They will lose, in our opinion, at Washington and against Notre Dame at home. So the record does sit at 6-6. This is the most likely scenario. We do think they're going to be able to make a bowl game in their first season in the Big Ten, but it's going to be tough. They did have a really, really difficult schedule, so it's going to be a really, really tough time for USC making a bowl game this year. The projected record sits at just above 6-6, 6.15 and 5.85. FPI is a little bit higher on the Trojans than we are. They've got them finishing closer to 7-5, with a 13% chance to make the playoffs and a 0.3% chance to win the national championship. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video.